Okay, let me just briefly introduce myself and then I'll turn over to my colleague. First of all, I want to thank you all for the invitation today. to Talk about quantum literacy education and in particular workforce development. My name is again Kevin Peters. I'm the director for the Center for Excellence in Math and Science Education at Morgan State University. And I do an array of things at Morgan State. Yeah, it's a part of it.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's blocking it out.
I do an array of things at Morgan State University. We write grants, we have all kinds of projects going on. We do a lot with teachers and outreach, academic enrichment for students at the K through 12, as well as the community college, higher education levels. So very, very happy to be here. I will say a little bit about my colleague here. Tim Akers is always on the cusp of technology.
Follow his lead.
Years ago, we were heavily involved with visual analytics. We had a grant with the Department of Homeland Security, follow up with grants from NSF. But he's always introduced cutting edge technology to the university. That I'm grateful. Tim.
Thanks a lot, Kevin. We appreciate it. They call us a tag team right there because we go all over the country on a lot of topics. So it's been a blessing. And because of our relationship with George Mason and Jessica and Patrick and your old team and Feng Yu, it really is it's exciting to be around kindred spirits. And I should say George Mason, as my brother just sent to me, is literally our 7th cousin. So, you know, twice removed, but he did send it. He's in genealogy. He goes, you know, we're related to George Mason. So having said that, I had to open up. So on this, is, as Dr. Peter said, we've been approaching STEM education. Both of us have been involved in HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, for those that don't know it, for well over 30 years, working both in different capacities. I used to be at the U.S. Centers for Disease Control as a senior scientist there, funding as well as working at the institutions, and then at academia. And Kevin and I both have been working at Morgan. I've been there 15 years, 15 and a half years, and you've been there, what have you? And, yep. And so from that, Kevin and I, as you can see our different titles, we wear 2 hats. We formed the National Quantum Literacy Network with a National Advisory Board and a Board of Directors. We are a 501c3 organization that has been founded. Our Board of Directors and Advisory Board members are Nobel Prize winners. We have generals, we have top leading government representatives, we have academia. We would have that as a slide. We normally show it, but this one here was focused on quantum education. So this is where we're going to kind of take it. But as you can see, my academic hat and then Kevin's academic hat right there. So I'm gonna, how do you change the next slide?
Just press the space button on the keyboard.
Oh, technology. This one right there. Okay. Patrick, you tore it up again, man.
Just this.
Only we had a quantum computer.
Oh, just you.
Ah, I see what's happening. So the Zoom window is doing, thinks it's doing annotations. Right here, I got it. I think. All right.
As they say, that'll learn you, right?
There we go. Now you're on the PowerPoint slide. Stop it with this annotation. Like that.
Right, here we go. All right, we'll just do the space bar.
Yeah.
Okay. Outstanding. Kevin, you want to start?
Yeah, so when we talk about quantum literacy and quantum computation, all of us know that there's been sort of like a revolution. There's been a revolution in terms of literacy. Look here, we had in the 70s, we had education literacy, 80s, we had computer literacy, STEM literacy, health literacy, and digital literacy, financial literacy. So you have all these different types of literacies, getting individuals up to date on specific topics. And so now we're dealing with quantum literacy education because in general, most people don't have a clear understanding of what quantum is. We understand that it's an interdisciplinary field of study, and we're focusing on the hyper disparities in quantum literacy and education training.
And if I might interject, you notice where it says hyper disparity. When you look at disparity, you normally look at A and B differences. Hyper is over time. And this is what we've been looking at quantum and scientifically from STEM education to looking at it over time, whereas historically underrepresented populations not been at the table. And let's just give you an example. This talk is on quantum, right there, you can stop there. Right there. This talk is on quantum education. And so this is what we want to share with you. Why and how can you target and tap a population that has not been at the table in this area, in this space? Brief historical journey. From the 1920s, 1920s, that's what the cars basically look like. Would you all agree with that? As of the 2023, we could argue there was a significant change, right? Tesla, I love my Teslas right there, Model S, by the way. In the 1920s, telephones. Remember the telephones they used to talk about? For those that maybe remember, you know, I got a little gray, but I still. But 23, what do we have now? The iPhone, Samsung, whatever brand you choose. Now, classrooms of the 1920s. Classroom setup, as you can see, right there. This little pointer doesn't work on that. That's okay. You can see rows. How much evolution since the 23s? Guess what? No change. We see virtually nothing out there when it comes back to look, case in point. Having said that, that has an impact. Kevin, you're going to take the next one. The question to consider is, in what way has education evolved? Use up space, okay.
Okay, and we want to really talk to you a little bit about why quantum literacy matters. Why does it matter? And we believe that it's a national imperative that everyone understands what quantum literacy is all about. If we look at this, there are a lot of applications to the workforce. It has applications with computing, networks, sensing, sensors, information science, cryogenics, cybersecurity. You all heard just recently that we had a big debacle over cybersecurity with our defense stuff. So all of this is related to quantum literacy. We say that we need to stop what's not working, look for solutions, listen to educate, and learn for tomorrow's workforce.
And as Dr. Peter just said, Kevin said, it's a national security imperative. It's not an option scientifically, educationally, academically, pedagogically. It's not an option because we have geopolitical adversaries out there that we're competing with, whether we know it, believe it, or not, we are. And for those that recognize it's a national security imperative, the National Security Agency and all these other agencies see it. Quantum and quantum computing is growing at exponential rates. And like Dr. Peters, Kevin just said, photonics, lasers, cryogenics, all these areas of application will require a workforce, and everybody does not and will not have to, oh, by the way, our colleagues from last time, hello again, from a PhD or master's, because most in the workforce are going to be technicians. They're going to be individuals who are going to work on the system. Who goes to Geek Squad? Raise your hand. Who's ever used Geek Squad? Yes, 1, 2, 3. Okay, we got a few here. 3. All right. So even the smartest, brightest and all that still go to Geek Squad because they're technicians. They may not necessarily be computer scientists, but they're guys and gals that have worked.
And the thing, before we move to the next slide, quantum is really an interdisciplinary field. Some people think that it's just related to physics, but it isn't.
Space Force better. Okay, good. Quantum education. When we talk about quantum education, these are just a few examples. Think of quantum education in its most conventional sense. It's in-depth knowledge of quantum mechanics, exploring specialized, focused research, graduate students, building technical skills in the quantum industry, very complex master's and doctorate level training, undeniably, well-recognized, well-written about. Next slide.
And then we have the quantum literacy education, where you have a broad understanding of quantum concepts, focused on non-specialist audiences. It encourages, as I just said, interdisciplinary collaboration. It improves general awareness of quantum technology, and offers introductory courses as well as certifications.
But notice that live literacy is important. Remember early on, we talked about financial literacy, STEM literacy, digital literacy, quantum literacy. The literacy is we all can read here. We're literate. But at what point how many of us are literary scholars? Raise your hand. Come on, literary scholars. Oh, we got one. All right. Well, most of us are not. The same thing in the quantum space. We want people that are literate. They may not know how to build from scratch or theoretically, mathematically, computationally do a quantum computer, but it's growing exponentially. And we need people that are technicians, as you will see.
So how do these two areas converge? They converge around workforce growth, understanding of technology, as we talked about interdisciplinary fields of study, ethical considerations, collaboration, and continuous learning. The last one I really like because we're in an academic session or the academia industry bridge. There has to be some type of bridge.
How many of you want to work in academia? Raise your hand. How many want to work in industry? Also, raise your boom. Uno, dos, tres, cuatro, cinco, seis. Okay, we got quite a few out there that want to also see the balance. What you have to do as educators, in my opinion, and his, is educate broadly to where you can educate for the academic scientific type, but also the workers, the technicians. Does that make sense? No? Yeah. Yes. All right. Got thumbs up. Ah, there you go. Yours.
Okay. Here's why we-
Can you read that? It should be. We've got a lot of screens around here.
Jobs,
It's a glare.
Oh, okay.
jobs, jobs, jobs. What we're talking about is where will be those jobs, where will the future jobs be relative to government, industry, education, and the military relative to quantum. And you can see here, there are many areas and focuses of study. Government, policy analysts. There's going to be a need for individuals in the government to make policy.
Regulatory.
Yeah.
Branch manager.
Exactly.
I was a Fed for a decade, not to cut you off,
Right.
Fed for a decade. We talked to the agencies like the Defense Logistics Agency. We talked to other agencies, the Threat Reduction Agency, Defense. These program managers have to write Federal Register announcements, program announcements for the academics and government and business to apply for grants and contracts. Is that fair? Right? These folks approached us. They want to know how can they understand writing these. They don't want to bring in necessarily a bunch of PhDs and others to write these, but how do you create an ability to where they would understand and write it? Does that make sense?
And
That's
that's
exactly
where the literacy comes in. And we also have industry jobs, software developers, hardware engineers. All these are jobs for the future that they're going to require quantum knowledge of quantum. Quantum error correction specialists and the quantum supply chain analysts. You know that we're struggling right now with the quantum, with the supply chain. We believe that quantum will have a solution for that.
Back a few years ago, about 3 years ago, we went to a meeting, myself and one of our colleagues, Dr. Denise Bacon, colonel, retired colonel. She and I went to a meeting with, I think it was ONR, also Naval Research. And one of the presenters that was presenting about building a quantum computer made a statement that there are physicists, they work with electricians, mathematicians, computer scientists. But guess what? They're all speaking different languages, not literal language, but different technicals. They don't necessarily all understand. So how do you develop this literacy to where one can understand?
And of course, there'll be jobs in education relative to physics, engineering, all this, and of course, the military.
This is important, what he said, the military. Who's heard of quantum gyros? Raise your hand. I was going to have you, okay? Because I think there's one of your colleagues out of, was reported, was that July of 2021 from, I think QEDC, where they talk about cold quantum. They built a quantum gyro, I believe. It was publicly not right, I believe. That's exciting because that had been in development for many years. but it's technicians. I'm former military myself. So having been in the military, that right there tells me, and I didn't have a college degree, ladies and gentlemen. And so you get technicians and others that will work this technology as it evolves. Yes, sir, go ahead. Starting out, this is what our team has. Now we're getting to the meat of what we're talking about more. So we've kind of hopefully set the stage up. But this is what our team, thanks to original support from the National Science Foundation Convergence Accelerator Program, helped pull our team together. And so our quantum literacy education, we take on a couple spots. You want to hit the first one, everybody? This is the basic. It's what we've come up with, a 4-tier way of looking at quantum education. Very, very basic. You can go through the whole thing. Let's just go through it. Let's open them all up. What do you say? These right there. There you go. These 4 areas. The first 2 is our sweet spot, to use the vernacular. That's a spot that we feel very comfortable at in terms of training, up to the point where it's basic understanding of quantum and a good understanding of it, to a point where we can teach some quantum mechanics and teach the basic principles up to the second year community college. At that point, George Mason, here you go, because that's really the 3rd and 4th are your finishing your bachelor's in physics, computer science, whatever the case may be, or master's or doctorate. That's the spots that we really are not trying to take on the world. We would take you from the 10th grade to your 2nd year of college. That's our sweet spot that we feel to get the workforce as a national security imperative up and running. And that's what's been told to us nationally through a lot of interactions, a lot of conversation with the military, the government, and others.
And then levels 3 and 4 nationally would be your higher education level in terms of comprehensive understanding, research associated with quantum.
And those tiers, by the way, they look like traditional academic tiers, but we're looking at quantum literacy, something to where you can see how do you create a tier system of learning. So there'd be those 2. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, this is a very impressive photograph that my colleague found on the internet. Everyone knows this is Albert Einstein. But this
I can hear. No, can hear you.
Albert Einstein.
Oh, okay.
1946, which was the year that my father graduated from high school. 1946, and he's at Lincoln University, and he's lecturing to a group of students and faculty at Lincoln University.
It's an HBCU.
And what's key to this particular slide is that Albert Einstein understood in 1946 the importance of being inclusive, the importance of diversity, equity, inclusion, and today we're still struggling having everybody included.
And you notice, and you please forgive me, you notice it says quantum education. Remember the quantum education, ladies and gentlemen, what level we were talking about, your 3rd and 4th. Those students there are most graduate and professors. So they're studying advanced physics and all of that at this level. Hopefully we're not losing you because we're putting you to sleep. Okay, I think he's got a class.
Yeah, I have a class.
Okay, good. We let it go. Next slide. This is really now you're in quantum literacy education, Kevin.
Yes, this is quantum literacy education. This is the work that we've been doing and we've been embracing and trying to get
What was that? Kevin? I
everyone
can't hear.
trying
They
to
can't hear.
embrace and try to be inclusive. This is, and this is why quantum literacy matters. And we had our first National Quantum Literacy Conference, which was at the U.S. Naval Academy, October 5th and 6th, 2022, where we had a variety, a diverse group of individuals come there. And we talked about quantum awareness.
Well, yeah, what you're seeing, the first slides to the top here, these slides here, ladies and gentlemen, was part of the Quantum Literacy Conference at the U.S. Naval Academy, and ROTC students from HBCUs, from high school, and these leading from the QEDC, from Rigetti, you know, from other HBCUs here, so from the White House, National Science, and so, you know, Deloitte, a lot of other groups. This here is what quantum literacy is all about. This was done, this modest man here, created in 2019, November the 9th, 2019, the first quantum literacy, the quantum the quantum literacy, the quantum age. He had 1,300 middle and high school students that showed up to our campus wanting to learn about that. We asked a question.
Well, Tim does not like politicians. And of course, we have politicians.
Shh, don't say they're recorded.
Yeah.
I love politicians.
Right. Right. And so they were giving this bill. Now, naturally, when you invite this bill, and so Tim said, boring to me via text. So I put it back on. I said, Tim, would you come up, talk to the students about quantum? And what came out of a brief conversation was an excitement about learning. Can you tell them what you did? Tim?
Well, the point is that they were all there, 1,300 students going like that, looking at their phones and all this kind of stuff and everything else like that. And then going to sleep, right? The bottom is like, who in here likes to play games on their computer? Raise it. This is not rhetorical, ladies and gentlemen. Who likes gaming on your computer? 1, 2, 15, 70, 30, 40. Okay, everybody likes gaming. Who cannot stand when a game goes slow on your computer? Raise your hand. When it crashes, it pixelates and everything else like that. So we did this kind of thing, keeping it very basic. Who in here would love to be on a computer that goes so fast that you can't even blink your eye that fast right there? And all hands were going up. That's exactly it. That got them curious about it, correct? Then they got engaged and it was getting them excited about it. That's when they moved into robotics and quantum and others. Otherwise, you put them to sleep and the learning goes down. This is what we call, and focus on, very important. We put decades of work into this and we've published on it. He wrote the book for the Department of Homeland Security on Centers of Excellence, the book, literally. And so we look at learning influencers and we realize that one size don't fit all. We'll talk to you about that momentarily. But we have to recognize some individuals have adaptive learning. Some of you have to do deep learning. Some of you have to do heuristic learning. We'll go into the specifics. This is very important because you're dealing with what's called, it's not clinically determined because it's called neurodivergent learning. Different styles of learning, not necessarily in a classroom. Yes.
Yeah, so this is very important because we all have a tendency to learn differently. One side may not fit all.
One size does not fit all. These are classes. How many use problem-solving exercises? Raise your hand. Who likes problem solving? Some hands go up, some okay, don't. Who in here mind mapping? Who does design thinking at Stanford? I love that. Been trained to do. Going there, taking students there, faculty. Mentorship programs. All of these inquiry, project-based simulations, gaming. How do we engage or build a national quantum literacy workforce? But we got to recognize as educators, as teachers, how do we target? We're all intelligent or we wouldn't be doing what we're doing. How do we make and transfer our learning, our knowledge to them? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think we have a physics teacher over here. Are you?
Nope.
I seem like I've seen this. It looked like, okay, so anyway.
Maybe someday.
Yeah, but what the focus on this particular slide is that we all learn differently, and there are different techniques to get students.
Dr. Peters.
There are a variety of different ways that you do it. And we know as educators that the worst form of teaching is to stand up and lecture for 30, 40, you will lose your students.
Come on, we're falling into that trap right now. Okay, so go ahead.
You lose people.
But for 10 years, let me keep that 1 second real quick. 10 years, we just finished a grant in 2020 from the US Department of Homeland Security for the Science Technology Directorate. And Dr. Peters and I finished that, and we had about 16 students per year. It was for 10 years. And the whole point is these students were learning, we taught them visual analytics. Make a long story short, we had to employ every technique to make sure we reported in our 10-year report, our graduation rate was 98%. And the point is that we had to employ every technique because if once you'll see a concluding comment here from the US military. Go ahead. Pull them all up. Strap in. Have you strapped in, you all? Okay. Good.
Okay, this is something that we're very, very passionate about, that we have developed. It's a 10-step process in terms of quantum literacy, so that individuals can understand what quantum literacy is all about. And in education, first thing you want to do is do a pre-assessment. We have a pre-assessment of the skill levels of students. We want to talk about real world application. How does quantum relate to the real world and to a student? Then we talk about components, step 4, schematics, terminology, the taxonomy associated with quantum literacy, building blocks for learning, visualization, step number 8. Pictures are worth 1,000 words, problem solving, algorithms and equations, get them to understand various problems associated with quantum. And finally, to test all this out, you have to have some type of post-assessment.
You saw in our slide earlier, theories, quantum entanglement, quantum superposition, quantum erasure, quantum tunneling, quantum decoherence. Moving into all these theoretical quantum terms is the theoretical. Giving the students, getting their feet wet, tapping it a little bit. Don't throw them in it to a mathematical equation or algorithm to show how smart you are. Rather, build it up to that, to a point to where applications, we showed you the different applications. That's what students have told us. They want to see how things are applied because that allows them to get their hands dirty. And as Kevin mentioned, deconstructing it. If you've got a quantum component there, how do you, some of our other slides, we can show a quantum computer that has all the components and we break them down to its constituent components and let people begin seeing those individual components. How they work is another issue. And then getting them to understand a schematic, it allows their brain to function and move into a pathway. This is not due to us. We synthesized this over many years and to create this. And it seems to work pretty well, right, sir? And by the way, I didn't take my inhaler today, so I apologize. Guys, got your cameras out? Feel free. This is the magazine, a trade publication that we've been building. It came out during our quantum literacy conference at the Naval Academy this past 5th and 6th of October. And this magazine is the first trade publication, Quantum Literacy. It's got some phenomenal articles from some significant contributors. The next issue coming out is a very special issue coming out. It's going to be on the quantum supply chain. So we're going to disclose it right now, but that's what it's going to be on. So you'll get a really good sample. This was our program, but at the same time, it was our beta version of our Quantum Literacy magazine. And so we're hoping that it evolves over the decades. So our next one, our contributing authors are concluding at the 28th of April. So we hope to have that out released really soon. And we were told that some of your colleagues here and some other universities have downloaded massive. Our web developer told us that we get about 900 hits a day. That's pretty significant. Yes, sir.
This is the part that Tim makes. He believes, and I believe,
we believe
the quantum literacy education must be fun. So he designed this to show that it can be fun. Individuals can learn quantum.
And you got to get a Nobel Prize, everybody. Here in this Nobel Prize committee in quantum literacy, or we had actually said quantum machine learning, but we want a quantum literacy, and that's another issue. But it should be fun, and it should, be enjoyable. Next slide. Like the military said here, if the student, you can leave it like that. If the student failed to learn, the instructor failed to teach. And one student in the military, when you go to a military academy or you go to a training program, it's every single trainee is the one that is most important. The single one. And you can take the next one, sir.
And we've come up with this theme that came from our NSF grant, where convergence begins, learning accelerates. Where convergence begins, learning accelerates.
Yeah, next slide. And that's where notice that the playoff of this NSF category, Convergence Accelerator Program. So were we on time? Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions that you all might have concerning?
And he'll answer them all. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, we'll answer them again. Yes.
So, as in, the nice thing about quantum and in terms of participation and representation is that it is not a moral discussion. It is national security imperative, right? So that cuts across any sort of political fault lines that might exist in our country right now. So that's great. Like, has your work shown how we've been failing communities in the past that are underrepresented in these areas, and at what point we can intervene in the most effective way? And how, I guess most importantly from where I'm sitting now is what is the most effective way to intervene and assist at every level of education? Because we don't want to say that like, oh, we didn't start this till last year and it's a K through 8 program. So anybody who's over 8th grade, sorry, you don't get to benefit from such efforts. Like how can we at the collegiate, what is the work we can do at the collegiate level? What is the work we can do at the high school, middle school, elementary, and even beyond in retraining and certification? So this is a really broad question, so I apologize.
It is a broad question. I'm gonna.
No, go ahead. I was gonna say, that one word that we use,
It starts with awareness.
bingo. That was his exact right on.
Awareness. People simply don't know what quantum is all about. Starts with awareness, but then we have to go back and we're working on a call to action plan. You really have to start at the K through 12 level with this whole literacy piece and build up. Teachers have to, at the university level, teachers have to get teacher training as to what quantum is all about, so that you can teach them. When we talk about business and industry and government, we've had government agencies come to us and say, could you come to us and explain what to our people, what quantum is all about and how it connects to their work. So the whole awareness piece has to start. Tim?
Yeah, and it, Patrick, that's a great question, because when we started this project, we began finding that we started looking to 1999 during the first QIS meetings that were held, and found, looking at the agenda, and make a long story short, there was no representation of the populations we were looking for. Our team went through hundreds of photos and agendas. Is that an exaggeration? And we could not find representation for minority business enterprises, HBCUs, or any picture of anybody who had Dr. Peters' hue. Am I misrepresenting that?
That's true, but we also, as he just said, it's a national imperative that we do this, the whole country. It's a national security issue. If we don't get everyone on board, other countries, and you know, you can talk more about this, will surpass us in the quantum. We're in the second quantum revolution, yet many people don't know.
And since, without going into the detail, we've had those in the intelligence community approach us literally on multiple occasions, because the bottom line is, how do we create as infrastructure that educates? And not just the small percentage for bachelor's or master's or doctorates, but the workforce. Because as this technology, this nascent technology comes out, it's got to have workers to assemble, to build, to manufacture, right? Would you all agree with that?
The other thing is,
Robots can't do it all.
yeah, the other thing is the investment. I think China is investing quite a bit of money in quantum.
8 times.
18 billion, we just,
It's up to 18.
it's 18 billion, they have 15 billion, one source, 300 billion, and we have 2.27 billion in from 2000 and, I'm so sorry.
I think it's a 2022 number. Yeah.
That's
I
correct.
think we're thinking of the same chart.
Yeah, but we have, well, we found some other sources, but there's up to 18 billion now.
So we're far behind. Other questions?
I won't assume it, but have you permeated OUSD's STEM policy group with the labs and personnel office? I assume you have. or-
We've communicated with many of them from the exact.
Oh, okay, just I figured, because they're like with the
Yeah.
policy change.
I used to be on the National Quantum Initiative Advisory Committee until they got the new cohort there. And so we've worked with many of the folks from
I
the
see Dr. Pamela Potty.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. But we want to bring those individuals as kind of a gathering without going into too much detail. But right now we're trying to avoid as much as possible. We've put together, in the spirit of disclosure, we presented it on October the 6th nationally at our event. We proposed what we call the 5-year, $5 billion plan. We are finishing up at this very minute our call to action. On February the 23rd, the White House, the National Science Foundation, and a number of agencies asked us to give a talk. We gave a talk virtually, and we presented that, and they saw our dashboard that we've been creating, and they saw our micro-credential certification. So we've disclosed a lot of information right now, but because the nation needs it. You know,
I met Dr. Palmer Polly at Yogi STEM. And so we've been talking about, we will be talking about integrating quantum literacy into.
But that's great. Yes, sir. Louder, please.
I'm a little bit confused on a fundamental level, especially the K through 12 part. Like, what does quantum education look like to a sixth grader? I guess.
In my humble, you want to answer or do you want me?
You can start and I'll follow up.
Okay. In my opinion, don't mean anything. Quantum education, quantum literacy education is a different thing. And that's where you begin getting them to become somewhat literate about the pieces, creating components and others that they can play in, just like they can do a puzzle, getting their mind, inculcating into them this mindset of understanding, teaching a student in a gaming program, gaming where you show superpositioning of two rocket ships that all of a sudden appear at the same time. That inculcates into the young mind the concept of, you know, this duality, if you will, this concept of electron, as it were, being in two places at the same time. But they're equating it with a ship, a rocket ship. So gaming is
Exactly.
there's a group out of the UK and Romania that's doing some phenomenal work in the areas of gaming.
For that level, I think gaming is a powerful tool. You guys know how much time is devoted for young kids on gaming. It's phenomenal. So introducing these concepts at a very young age through gaming and having the application is important. Good question.
That's a great question.
We have the Virginia Serious Gaming Institute here where they try to make, they do make educational games. We'd love to see about working with you guys to make maybe some literacy-based games. That could be really
We'll also
interesting.
talk a little
Great.
bit later about some of the stuff we're doing at K-12.
And
So,
what you're all saying is last night, Dr. Peters saw something in our conversations. We have an animation that we're looking at. We would love to work with George Mason on, since you all have been forthright on many times. So what better partners? And if we can show you what we're envisioning that no one in the nation has created. But it would target your question, K through the other group, 12, because it's using animation. I don't want to go too much detail, because if we did this through an NSF grant jointly, I'm absolutely convinced you're right. The rocket ship.
Yes.
Yeah, so we are convinced that we can do this jointly as collaborators. And with your influence on behalf of George Mason and ours at Morgan and the National Quantum Literacy Network would be a win-win, undeniably.
Are there any other questions?
Please, 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 please. We like questions.
Well, we want to thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much.